When it came to the final season of Squid Game, the showrunners truly wanted to make it go out with a bang and allow it to become even more memorable than what it already was after 3 seasons, and I think they definitely managed to do that. There were so many main character deaths and twists along the way in this final installment, and that means that there were a ton of powerful moments to choose from. So with that, I thought I'd share what I thought the 5 most powerful moments in the entirety of Squid Game Season 3 were. Here are the 5 most powerful moments in Squid Game Season 3. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Number 5. Hyun-Ju's death. The moment that I feel first makes it into this list at number 5 is Hyun-Ju's death. This was a moment that I really didn't expect, and I was just devastated when it happened. What made this scene so heartbreaking was the fact that in a game where everybody was running around and being selfish, Hyun-Ju did the opposite. She fought off all of the people that tried to attack her, Geum-Ja, and Jun-Hee, and she even found the door to the exit, which she opened but decided to go back because she had a heart and didn't want to leave the others in case they got hurt. This showed a good side to humanity, something that was difficult to find in there. However, as she went back, Myung-Ju killed her as she walked through the door because he was acting greedy because he thought even though he was through after killing one person, the more he wiped out, the higher chance of him getting more money was. Plus, Jun-Hee also told him to find her, so there was probably a weight of responsibility that Jun-Hee felt a little bit too. Seeing Hyun-Ju's face just freeze up and then drop because we knew that something bad had happened was so upsetting, and it hit so hard because she was only there because she wanted to share the good news that there was a way out for all of them. She would have survived if she was selfish, and that was the horrific thing. Seeing her lying there on the floor with her eyes open and Geum-Ja closing them for her as she was in tears, we saw that she was somebody that protected them and she was now no more, and you felt that sense of mourning, loss, suffering and sadness. This is definitely a moment that deserves to be here. Number 4. Geum-Ja's death. This was a death that truly caught me off guard, especially in the way that she went out. Geum-Ja was a character that was just pure, and it was heartbreaking seeing her end things for herself. When she was speaking with Gi-Hun before it happened the night before, there wasn't a part of me that thought that she was going to do that. I thought she was just pleading with Gi-Hun to get his old mindset back and find the strength within him to save them like she thought that he was brought there to do. She had this sense of guilt that was within her over the fact that she killed her own son. Her son that she originally swore that she'd always protect and said to God that she'd walk through flames for, so she could no longer live with those actions. We also saw that she'd given up on humanity. She was pleading and begging with everybody to vote for the games to end, but it fell on deaf ears and nobody was listening to her, meaning that the games were just going to keep on continuing. Even after the most brutal of games, which was hide and seek, where people had to quite literally slaughter each other in front of their eyes, they were still willing to continue. So she'd reached her breaking point and she realized that people wouldn't change. The sheer shock factor of having her die during the night and the striking image of her there was one which really caught me off guard, and I think myself and most other people that watched it had the same reaction as Gi-Hun. One of shock, one of sadness, and one of hopelessness. Number 3. Myung-Ju holding the baby over the edge. Everything about this scene was just so strong. Not only the way that it looked, which had Myung-Ju's face covered in blood, screaming, hysterical, exhibiting animalistic traits and threatening to drop them, but it also showed the most evil side to humanity and the fact that there were deeper and darker levels that the show was willing to go to. This was Myung-Ju's own flesh and blood, and he was prepared to disregard that for the sake of getting all of the prize pot for himself. Not only showing just how selfish he was, but also just how evil humanity could truly be at its core. The build-up to this entire scene with the fight that was taking place and the threatening of Gi-Hun when they were on the bridge showed that he made up his mind long ago, and that he truly didn't care for anything or anybody else but himself and the money that was there. It always kind of felt like Myung-Ju's character could go one of 2 ways, and he'd become involved following Jun-Hee's death, or it would go in the opposite direction, and we ultimately ended up seeing the opposite. His death is also something that I'd factor into this because it was all part of the same scene. Seeing the sheer amount of panic that he had on his face as the threads were breaking in the jacket one by one was somewhat satisfying because we saw how he was acting before with his aggressiveness. But at the same time, there was a purity to it because it stripped him right back to being human, rather than this animal that we previously saw, and his eyes spoke 1,000 words. Those of desperation, and he was now a man that knew that his time had come. It really was a powerful scene. Number 2. Jun-Hee's death. This was a death that I really didn't expect to happen. Jun-Hee was arguably one of the most innocent characters of all. She showed no signs of true aggression, and all she wanted to do was to complete the games. She'd just had her baby and she was injured following the hide-and-seek game where she fractured her ankle, so the jump rope game was something that was extremely difficult for her to do. We saw that Gi-Hun being Gi-Hun took the baby and promised to keep her safe, but he also made a promise to go back for Jun-Hee. However, with the time it took everybody to cross, it meant that there wasn't enough time for Gi-Hun to get back, and Jun-Hee made the decision to call it there and end things for herself. She called out that if Gi-Hun didn't survive, then there was no chance that her baby would, hence why she wanted him to stay. And with Gi-Hun looking on in an emotional way, with his heart breaking because of the loss that the baby would experience at such a young age, there was this beautiful close-up shot of Jun-Hee's face as a tear rolled down her cheek, and there she stepped off the edge of the ledge and fell to her death, rather than allowing the soldier to do it. The slow-motion nature of it all and the close-up to her face really allowed us to feel what she was feeling. That hurt in her eyes and the helplessness that she had throughout the entirety of the game was just incredibly upsetting to watch. With her being on the ground, which had flowers painted all over it, it was something which I felt symbolized life in the sense that the baby would get to live on, but also death, because she was now laying upon them. Number 1. Gi-Hun's death. The moment that I think is the most powerful in the entirety of the show is Gi-Hun's death. I feel like it was always going to be this scene. Not only did we see an epic build-up to it happening with everything that was occurring with Myung-Ju and the fact that Gi-Hun could have been killed that way, but it was from the stark realization that the red button hadn't been pressed, and he knew that he had to do what he felt was right in that moment, which was sacrifice himself. Myung-Ju's death counted for nothing, which is pretty much what everybody's death in that show counted for. When Gi-Hun cradled the baby, knowing what he was going to do to himself, you could see that care that he had in his eyes, his body, and running through his blood. The fact that he was staring down the VIPs and the frontman, knowing full well that they were behind the screen watching and seeing this death as entertainment. The emotionless look showed just how broken he was, and that he realized that he couldn't do anything about the games that were taking place because it was a wider issue that he alone wouldn't be able to solve. The line, "We are not horses, we are humans, and humans are," was such a strong moment. Horses were what were originally being bet on before Gi-Hun entered the games, and the very people within those games were being treated worse than horses. The ambiguity of leaving "humans are" as open was the perfect way for the conversation to be left open. This is because humans are what we make them. We're constructs of our own society, and change can only happen when people work together. In this instance, humans were seen as evil and bad on both sides of the games, but Gi-Hun believed that they were better, and he represented the good in humanity. With him also looking down the lens of the camera and it being directed towards us, adding that real personal feel, and it then going into slow motion as he fell. My stomach dropped as he dropped, and it truly marked the end of the show. Hearing player 456 eliminated was the final nail in the coffin, and this moment really was not only the most powerful one in the entirety of the show, but in the entirety of the series. So, there you have it, the 5 most powerful moments in Squid Game Season 3. These are the ones that really stood out to me, but I'm sure some of you might feel differently and you have your own, so comment them below. If you want to see a full breakdown of Season 3 of the show, then check the video below. I've also broken down every new game and shared why I thought the ending was perfect. As always, thanks for tuning into the video, and I'll see you in the next one.